All right. It's the X's podcast. Tonight we're talking about breakups. Do men need more than one woman? uh Life insurance and Will Smith and Chris Rock. So stick around. Okay, so first video up we're going to react to is How Soon is Too Soon?
How long after a breakup should you start dating again?
The next day. The next
Isn't
day.
that too soon? Why?
If you really decided to break up and move on, you didn't decide it that day, right? If you want to break up with a person, you should just be honest.
All right, so how long after a breakup should you be allowed to go out and date?
Well, I think you should take time to heal from the previous relationship because we all heard that thing called, I would, because we have that thing called bringing baggage from the last relationship into your new relationship. And that's the number one way how you do that is by not healing from your previous relationship, dealing with any traumas that you endured in that relationship, and then trying to go forward like too soon. Like some people get it, they jump in and out of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're never successful. You're not dealing with your previous issues. You're trying to build on top of baggage. You cannot do that.
I think it's more complicated than that. I think that in every breakup, there's one person that's already psychologically moved on in their head. They've held out information from the other person. They moved on. And so when they finally do reach that point where they break up, they're able to move on quicker because they've done moved on, right? They've done moved on from it. So I think in that way, you have two types of people in every breakup. But then I also think that, people handle things differently as well. And I think generally speaking, there's probably two types of people in how they handle breakups. One, right, is the first type of person kind of feels it immediately. They feel the pain of it, the loss of it. They feel all the emotional stuff of the breakup. They feel it immediately. The other person, it may take them a month, maybe even 2 months before it really smacks them in the face and they realize what they lost, right? And so I don't think it's just as simple as, oh, you got to go do all this work on yourself. I think that everybody is different.
Yeah, but see, that's why they run into those issues in every relationship. They're not doing the work. When you skip doing the work for yourself, your self healing, that's when it's going to come back up. It's going to come up in every relationship you go through until you deal with yourself. And a lot of people try to skip over that and think, well, because I just don't like them anymore. Okay, but you spent time, and especially depending on the longevity of the relationship. If you're a few years with someone, like you've been with them long enough that they've made some type of mark on you and you have to deal with that. Otherwise, the next person you meet, you might likely hurt them because of that situation. So yeah, like you should definitely do the work because, and then even the person who, let's say they left it. Well, if you didn't tell them that, then you lack communication skills and you should probably work
that's
on
common
that.
though. Like if you go and if you pay attention to interpersonal relationship experts and therapists, they'll tell you that in almost every couple that breaks up, right, there's a withholding of information from one party who is battling with the decision to move on or stay. And the reason that they're withholding that information is really out of a concern for the other person, right? They care about them. Obviously, they don't want to hurt them. So they withhold that information. You may not agree with it. It may not be right, but it is what it is, right? It's the process that people go through when they're trying to move on. And if you're the person that is that person, if you've already moved on in your head and you're battling with, do I want to be with this person or not? When you finally get to the point where you cut it off, it's like it's like somebody gives you wings. It's like you've finally been like somebody took the shackles off of you. And if you're that person, you're probably much more likely to go run out and have some fun and meet new people and this, that, the other. I've been on both sides of this. I've been the person that's like moved on immediately. And then I've been the person that's like, how can they just like throw everything away? Like years of love and affection, they just throw it away in one night and just act like it never existed. Well, that's my ignorance at the time, right? I had no idea that they had obviously, it wasn't just that moment that they made that decision. It was something that they had been dealing with for some time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take. So that brings me to sort of a different type of thing that we don't do too often, but basically I want 3 tips for breakups. All right. All right, IKEA, what are your 3 tips for people during a breakup?
The first one that I said in the last topic, go through your healing process. The second one I would do is love yourself. Go back to relearn yourself, love on yourself, make sure that you understand who you are, understand what you want going forward when dealing with another person. Like those are my top 2 right there. Just because like I get like with relationships, sometimes in your previous relationship you could have made some mistakes, or there could have been things that you could have possibly done better but chose not to or wasn't aware of them. But that self-reflection that you go through, that process you go through, will allow you to be able to see that, to help you be better for the next time. So it's definitely taking that time out to love on yourself, relearn who you are and what you truly desire when you want to share your life with another individual. Learn what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. And sometimes I think a lot of times people get in relationships and they don't have those conversations at the beginning process before deciding to get in a relationship. They just do it based off of attraction and everything else, but they kind of skip those important factors like what is it that they want. And I think both people should know that. So knowing what you want would be my third tip on that
Yeah.
going forward when dealing with someone else.
So my 3 tips. The first one, and a lot of people struggle with this. I don't, right? But my first tip is you got to cut them off for a little while. Like you can't, I don't care if it requires blocking. I don't care what
Mhm.
it takes, right? When you're in a breakup and the objective is to sincerely move on, like if you know that there's no getting back together, you need to avoid their social media. You need to avoid looking at what they're doing, right? Because a lot of people, when they break up with someone, they start showing a different side of themselves that you're not familiar with. And it's aimed purposely to hurt you, right? Like that's the point of their behavior. It's to hurt you. And if they think you're watching, then they're going to show their behind even more. So I think that you need to cut them off for a little while. And the truth is, if you're going to get back together, like cutting them off is only going to reveal that quicker, right? Because if you cut them off and they kind of notice the absence of you in their life and they suffer as a result of that, and then you, by going through that process of cutting them off, you realize the absence that you feel, in a couple, give it 3-4 weeks of not speaking to them at all, and you're going to kind of realize, okay, this means enough to me that I want to work it out, right? Or by cutting them
Mhm.
off, you're going to save yourself a lot of pain, a lot of whatever, because they're out there doing whatever. Okay. My second piece of advice is go get a haircut, right? Shave your
Yeah.
face and go get a haircut. Or if you're
What
a
if
girl, go get your hair done and your nails done.
what if they
All right.
already cut their hair and shave on a regular basis?
Well,
if they already do that.
then go get a new outfit. Go get a new tattoo. Go do something that makes you feel good about you. Now, you don't have to go and flaunt it, right? You don't have to be that guy that I was just talking about. You don't have to be the person that's like, look how great I am. Look what you're losing. But it's more about making yourself feel good about yourself, because when you're in a relationship for a long time, you tend not to associate a lot with family and friends and such, because you're just so wrapped up in your relationship, right? And so all you kind of grow to know is that other person. And we can tend to forget who we really are when we get wrapped up in relationships. And so upon a breakup, I always think it's a good idea to go to your barber, get a haircut, get a new outfit, right? And just walk with some confidence. Find yourself again. Find out who you are outside of that relationship, for a minute. And then that kind of brings me to the third one. The third piece of advice that I have: surround yourself with people that love and care about you. Because one of the things that we know about breakups is often we feel rejected, right? We feel the person that we were in love with, we weren't good enough for them, right? If we're on the short end of the breakup stick, we can lose a lot of self-confidence. We can feel battered and beaten,
Mhm.
unworthy. All of these things are very, very difficult things to deal with. Rejection is one of the hardest things for a human being to face. And it's important in that moment to not only cut them off, but to go get a haircut and feel good about yourself, and surround yourself with your homies, with your family, with the people that love and care about you, right? That are going to lift you up and remind you why you are who you are and what makes you a good person and why they like you, all these great things about you. So that's my 3 tips of advice. You disagree? Agree?
No, I had my 3. I was listening to yours. What are you talking about? I thought you was about to play the next slide. That's why I didn't say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move on to the next one. Next one's kind of funny, I think. Let's check it out.
You need to bring more women for your husband. Trust me, the moment you accept this, your life's gonna change. Men need more than one woman, and men crave more than one woman. See, the thing is, we don't want to say this to ourselves. We prefer to say, I'm enough, but it has nothing to do with you. As a matter of fact, when you understand this and have this real talk with your husband, when you understand this, the bond you have with your husband will be unbreakable.
Men need more than one woman. So I'll take this one since it's really a question for men. I call bull crap. It's total garbage. I don't know who brainwashed this poor girl, but she doesn't value herself very much if she thinks in order to gain an intimate, sort of relationship, intellectual relationship with a man, that she has to, you know, be okay with another woman. Like at that point, you're his buddy. You're not even in his woman. Like you're just like one of the guys, right? Because you're like helping him pick out chicks or what? Like it's ridiculous on its face
Mhm.
in my mind. I know as a young man that was full of testosterone, like in the party scene, whatever, hanging out, dancing, going out on the weekends, whatever. Like, yeah, okay. So you go through a phase where you want to sow your oats, they call it, right? But that is not to be confused with the ability to love one person. That should not be confused with having the ability to be committed to one person and be loyal to that one person. I mean, if you care enough about the person that you're with, there really isn't anybody out there that can really catch your attention, right? Like, if you genuinely appreciate and value if you don't settle for less than what you think you deserve, then you're going to wake up every day excited and happy about the person that you're with. And then when you go out and about and you see other women, you're not even going to see them in that light. You might notice a good looking woman, but it's not going to like hit your radar, right? That like, it's not going to be like, she's so hot that you got to cheat on your woman, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's not the way it's not the way that it works when you really love and care about somebody.
Well, and then here's the first thing that you catch. She, was wearing a hijab, right? So the first question I would ask her is, was your family, like, are they from the Middle East? Clearly, because she seems she could possibly be Muslim. We know that some Muslims do practice having more than one wife.
Right.
But in this country, that rate of having more than one wife is highly unsuccessful in America, versus somewhere over there that it may work. So they keep trying, and it's very interesting because I was just seeing something with Uganda has an issue with them trying to do certain things that they do over here. They're trying to implement it over there. I understood her point. So, which leads me right back to this with that lady is we keep trying to take that particular instance and make it normal over here. It's not something that most of us have never grew up in that particular lifestyle. Unless you are not from America, you didn't grow up in a polygyny type of environment. Like, you just did not. Now, if you grew up outside the States, then that's different, but you got to realize where you are, you have to embrace the culture for where you live.
Yeah.
You cannot try to take another culture and implement it somewhere where they don't do that. And then let's just be honest. Is she not paying attention to the state of the economy? What guy can really afford to have several wives in America right now on a regular American salary that's not wealthy?
If they're not bringing home an income, I mean, some people, I guess, could make it work economically. Some people may do that for economical reasons, but I'm with you on the culture thing. Like, in Utah, they practice multiple wives, whatever, but that's the culture there, right? Like, the women are raised that way, right? They're raised to expect that. I think it's unfortunate that they're raised that way because we know that they still have jealousies. They still carry the emotions of feeling less than one of the other wives. And, I just feel like every woman has, every woman deserves to feel like she's the highest priority to her man, right? Like, that there is no other woman that's a higher priority to him. And speaking from my own experience, I've been so in love with someone that there's just no way that I would bat an eye at someone else, because fear is the ultimate motivator, right? Fear motivates you. Say what you want about it. Fear is a motivator. And if you're with someone and you really love and care about them, then that means you really fear losing them, right? Like, you do not want to lose them. And the fear of losing them will motivate you to treat her right, to prioritize her, to put her on a pedestal above all other women, to not have wandering eyes when you go out in public. Like, if a guy is out there trying to convince women that it's like a biological, like, necessity that men have more than one woman, I call baloney. I call bullcrap, because I am a man and I know what it feels like to love and be committed to one person, right? Like, you got to cut the rest of the world off. You still got your fly, jumping
Yeah,
around.
it's seriously irritating me. I'm literally about to get up and kill it because I don't even know how I got in here. But continue talking. I can hear you. I'm just going to kill it if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious, like, what if the tables are turned, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why don't women say the same thing? Why are there not women out there that are like, oh, well, I deserve two husbands, or I need two husbands, right? Like, it's just kind of weird to me that you only hear this rhetoric when it comes to men. And yeah, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it because, again, like, you love and care about someone enough, even if someone comes at you unexpectedly, even if someone makes an advance at you that was unwarranted or unwanted. Like, when you really, really love and care about someone, you're you're gonna put up a shield to those advances really, really quick, because you're gonna fear losing that person, right? Like, the fear of losing that person is going to cause you to reject the person that's trying to hit you privately, which that frustrates me in and of itself. Like, if somebody's in a relationship, you just need to go on and leave them alone. Like, get out of the DMs of people that are in committed relationships. Like, you just leave them folks alone. If you want to sit on the sideline and wait till somebody becomes a free agent and then go in and try to make your offer, whatever. But somebody has somebody, you just need to leave them alone. What are you like, tearing the studio up or what?
No, but if you know, like them things are not easy to freaking catch. It's
Just
almost
leave
like
it
it's
be.
almost no, it's almost like they know like they're under attack. So as soon as you get close to it, it moves, and then you have to wait on it to
You
decide
should have
not to
kept the
go.
camera on. That would have been really
No,
entertaining.
I had the door open earlier, so apparently it flew in and I didn't catch
You
it.
you really get that upset over a fly.
Yes, I cannot stand them. They're the most disgusting things on the planet. Literally, when it lands on you, they can vomit or whatever they say they do. So no, I do not like flies. Um, but yeah. So, but back to that though. Yeah, I really it at this point in America, when you see people talking about it, it's an attention grabber. That's literally all it is. Because if you look at the state of the economy, like I said, you name a person who is wealthy, there's not that many of them. So you can't afford it. So we have to stop trying to preach to these women that they should go after the same guy and be okay with being whatever number they are,
Yeah,
because you're preaching to these people to devalue themselves. You're
yeah,
preaching to these people to not love themselves enough to find themselves to be worthy, to say that they're good enough to have a monogamous commitment with one guy and not a whole bunch of other females.
yeah.
And then look at the success rate and then talk to people who have quote unquote tried it, and they'll
Um,
tell you their experiences that they've had with, and the reason that they are no longer a part of it today, because most
right.
of the time they want the ones who are younger and more vulnerable and don't know any better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's ridiculous on its face. But the other thing that I think that this does, like, when I'm in a relationship, um, one of the things that I cherish, and I think I've said this on this show, but I'll repeat it. One of the things I cherish most about being in a relationship is that alone time at the end of the day, at
Mhm.
night. And if you got a bunch of kids running around and you're both working a job, life is filled with stresses and anxiety and bills and cars breaking down and this, that, and the other. But when you're in a committed relationship, the one constant that you have, the one safe place that you have, the one consistent, secure place you can depend on is being next to the person that you're with every night. Right. And that sort of intimacy, and I'm not talking about in a physical way, I'm talking about
Mhm.
on a spiritual, emotional level, that sort of intimacy that you get from that sort of consistency of just being with the same person every single day and night. I think that when you bring 3 and 4 people into that, you devalue that and destroy it completely, right? Because
Yep.
now you're just like, what? I don't know, like pulling numbers out of a hat every night? Like, come on. Like, that's not real commitment, love, dedication. And, certain cultures, whatever, that's their way of life, whatever. But I just don't believe in people saying that it's a need. That's where I find most fault with this idea. Do men need more than one woman? Right? When you say you need something, that's like water. That's like
Hmm.
food, right? It's like if men don't have more than one woman, then they're gonna fall over dead, right? And that's just we know that's not true. It's ridiculous on its face, right?
That's just from sitting, and she probably sits up under those platforms that complain about women and everything they don't do or bring to the table. That's probably what she. A lot of people, if you're not careful, you literally brainwash yourself into believing that rhetoric. But the number one thing I really think is most important to consider is the risk factor of having being a part of that, and you got all these different women, because what most of those women who are not aware of what goes on in that is you don't have a commitment to the other woman, it's just to the man. And there was actually a guy who is calling himself and they keep saying it wrong because it's polygyny, and that's what he is. He's practicing polygyny.
Polygyny,
Yeah, so he has two girlfriends.
polygamy.
No, polygyny is where he is the one dating the women. Like they're not dating each other. So, and they're not dating outside of that. Like there's no there's differences in that, but they're not
Yeah, I
exactly
know.
right. But this guy's literally up there, and you can just, if you like, they're always on TikTok live, and that's how you know, like, yes, the women are bringing in
I
the
think I've seen
views.
them. Yeah.
You probably did. He's claiming he's like making like $50,000 a day, and he can make you $50,000 a month, and all. It sounds like some scammer type of
Scam,
stuff.
snake
Yeah,
oil.
because he won't name the business, he will not name
Right.
it or anything like that. And then there was people who was actually calling in and like kind of calling him out, and you could just tell like he was trying to filibuster. But anyway, so you could tell these women, and someone asked, because the lady asked, the one lady, I think her name was Bria or something, like, how do you feel about the other woman? Like, what's your feelings towards her? And they literally said, like, we don't date each other. We date him. So it's kind of
Right.
separate.
Yeah.
And so that right there is a sign that there is not going to be emotional availability between you and if he gets 5 other wives, because he's claiming he wants 7. So he has 2 girlfriends right now. How is a man able to deal with all of these
I
different
don't know.
personalities, all of their
I don't know.
feelings and emotions? It's just not going to work. So it's best to just stick to being
I'm
monogamous
afraid
and
of
get it
just
over with.
I'm just afraid of having one.
Right.
Like
Like one personality is enough to deal with on top
one
of your own.
woman is scary enough for me. Like I'm not married for a very good reason. Like my peace of mind
Right.
is worth so much to me. And so like I just won't entertain the idea of anyone that's gonna mess with that peace of mind. It's gotta be someone that's totally chill, live and let live type of vibe. And that's the only kind of girls that I date. Like if they feel uh moody and uptight to me, I don't entertain it. But the idea of having 2, 3, 4, 5 women, whoo, good lord.
Hmm.
So
And
Harvey
then
Harvey
chaos.
says flies are pretty quick.
They are. They're annoying. I really think flies are like the devil or something, because you be trying to get rid of it. It's just like, oh my gosh, I can't stand those things.
My agrees exactly. She says, shout out my. That's my grandmother, and she's probably our biggest fan, most loyal fan.
She also said no at the very beginning of the question. She put no.
Yeah. Which
Hmm.
one was that? How soon is too soon to start dating?
No, should women bring other women to their husband, or whatever that
Oh,
question
yeah,
was?
yeah, yeah.
Or no, do men need more than one woman? And you see it's in all caps with 2 explanations. So
So the thing about my is she like gives us stars and stuff too. Like she really supports this platform. I told her when I seen her a couple weeks ago, I'm like, I just need like a couple hundred more of you.
Yeah.
If I had about 200 or 300 more of you, then what we're doing would be worth it. So,
She's
all
like the
right.
platform influence right now.
Yeah. Okay. So I come across this next video and I thought it was a really interesting perspective and take on urban gun violence. And so let's check out the video. We'll react.
Or the quickest way to actually get rid of inner city murders and violence, go out and get everybody insured. Because if every time you look up and you see 10 people was shot in Chicago, not nationally, we talking Chicago alone. If 10 people died in Chicago, that's $10 million of new wealth. If everybody had $1 million life insurance policy, $35, $40. If everybody had $1 million life insurance policy and they die and their parents just inherited $500,000 to a $1 million life insurance policy, and this is happening every week. So now black households are getting more and more wealth, unfortunately, due to the demise. But what I'm saying is that if everybody had life insurance policies, the way we would solve violence in the hood, is insurance companies is gonna say, wait a minute, Northwestern Mutual gonna say, no, I didn't pay it out. Too many people.
All right, IKEA. Can life insurance solve gun violence in America?
Nope. And here's why. What he was sitting there saying, if 10 people, had life insurance, but guess what's just going to happen is the life insurance companies are going to get smarter and they're going to change the stipulations to getting insurance. Because here's one thing that people do not know. You can literally put a life insurance policy on someone without them even knowing. You can't. There are people who literally right now know that there are people, well, I'm saying in inner city areas that literally know of individuals who are in the streets who put themselves in certain predicaments. They have life insurance policies on them and they don't even know that. So the insurance companies are too smart. Like they wouldn't be multi-billion-dollar companies for being stupid. So if they seen that all these inner city people were going and getting life insurance, first of all, they're going to go and get private investigators to post up, kind of watch these people's activity and report back to them and say, hey, well, they're kind of gangbanging a little bit. So go on and cancel that policy because we're not going to pay for it. It's almost going to be like if a person commits S, they cannot get life insurance coverage. Like they're going to cancel the policy. They'll find a way to do that. So what he was saying was, basically, he was telling us he was misinformed on how insurance actually works.
Well, I'll say this, okay? Initially, I thought, wow, he might be onto something, but not in the way that he elaborated, all right? Because my understanding of violence and how it is, how it thrives and where it thrives and how it's established and created and invented. Right? It all goes back to poverty. When you stick a bunch of people in an area that's destitute, there's no opportunity. Everybody's poor, right? And then it becomes a thing of survival. That's what breeds violence. It's not race. It has nothing to do with race. It's an economic thing, right? Poverty breeds violence. Anywhere you see really poor people, you will find higher rates of crime, higher rates of violence. Like, it doesn't matter anywhere in the world. This is true. Poverty breeds violence. And so initially I'm thinking, you know what? That might work, not in the way that he was thinking, because he was kind of like arguing that, boy, if they had to pay all that life insurance out, they'd figure it out then. They'd figure out a way to stop it then. If they were paying that much money out, then you'd see all kinds of resources flooded into these neighborhoods to figure this problem out. But that's not the way I would see it unfolding, right? I would see the neighborhoods getting enriched off of these payouts. And because the neighborhood is rising economically from this, crazy flood of money, right? That you would start seeing home ownerships rise. You'd start seeing renovations and revitalizations, and people would start owning their communities. But then the economist in me kind of kicked in, and I remember that old rule that we all have to live and go by in capitalism, and that's supply and demand, right? If if they started paying out a bunch of life insurance, big life insurance like packages like that,
Mhm.
they would no longer be $30. Right? To what you're saying, right? First of all, they're going to create different rules, different stipulations that kind of count you out.
Mhm.
But the most immediate thing that they could do, right? He was arguing, well, they're only $30, right? You get a life insurance for $500,000 for $30, right? Well, if they were paying them out like that, they wouldn't be $30 anymore. They would quickly elevate the price of these things to a point where people could not afford them. That's basic supply and demand. So,
And then not to mention that price can change based on health status, because we know that, like, if you have poor health, that policy is going to be higher if they even choose to cover
yeah,
you.
right.
So that they would have to be subject to all kind of different things. And that's why I said, like, they could probably research insurance
Yeah.
companies and how they go about coverages and certain policies, stipulations and stuff, because they look like he just went into talking.
Yeah.
I think what he really should have just brought it into was gun control, because you're talking about controlling the guns. That's what it's leading down to. You're talking about gun violence, it's guns. So he should have just said that and left the insurance company out of it, because they're a little too smart for that.
Well, the other thing he was making a point about, and I don't want to get too deep into the rabbit hole of the politics behind this, but he was talking about how a certain president was talking about, um, policing the streets of Chicago with the National Guard, right? Like sending the National Guard in, because some of these places have become essentially war zones, right? Like the only thing that they're missing is rocket launchers and grenades, right? Like that's the only difference between a lot of these neighborhoods and a real war zone. And so we have had some politicians that have said, well, we should send the military in to police our own people, right? Which is so backwards to me. Like the military is designed to fight off foreign enemies, not United States citizens. So I'm not so sure that I'm comfortable with sending um, the U.S. Guard in to fight American citizens. But you know, so that's kind of the angle that he was taking on that. It's like, how do we, instead of sending the National Guard in, how do we get them to see that this is an economical problem? And it really is. It really is. Like, it's an economics issue. Like, where you have thriving people economically, you don't have a lot of violence. Like, people are focused on their jobs, their careers, their, whatever, their luxury, their leisure. It's not an atmosphere of survival. And so I think solving gun violence personally has to start with the economics, has to start with uplifting neighborhoods and communities that are poor, irregardless. There's regardless of race.
Mhm.
Irregardless is not a word I heard. Did you know that?
It's a lot.
Irregardless is not a word.
Well, why has it been there for all that time if it wasn't? Just like can't used to be a didn't do. I mean, ain't, or was it ain't or can't? Because I remember Mr. Dixon, that art teacher
But you
from
know
Park
what?
Elementary, used to get on us in art class when we would say ain't, and he said ain't a word, and I ain't gonna say it no more. But you see,
Yeah.
it's a word now. And actually, I think it became a word like a couple years later. Like they went on and implemented it, but it always took me back to Mr. Dixon.
Well, I mean, communication is communication. And as long as the other person that you're talking to knows what you're trying to say, the the point of communication has, you've achieved the goal of it. But yeah,
Well,
and then I seen this one creator once. He said that he misspeaks and creates typos on purpose because he knows that there are grammar Nazis out there that will flood his comments and engage his content just because he's misspeaking and misspelling things. And then that made me think, well, maybe I should start saying irregardless all the time on purpose. So we can get
Well,
more,
I don't
more
read stuff.
engagement.
If I go into it, the start of reading it, you've got a whole bunch of misspelled jargon. There's like run-on sense, like everything about it, like to where you feel slow reading it, like something's wrong with you. I will disengage
And
it
that's not
immediately.
the
Like I'm
way.
not
That's
reading
not the
that.
way you got to do it. You have to. You have to do it in a way where it looks like you're trying to appear smart, but you're really stupid. That's the perception you have to give off. A person that's trying to sound really smart but is misspeaking words, like using the wrong words just to sound smart. Like if you do that, then people will flood your comments and be like, "Oh, you're misspeaking. You're not saying that. That's not how you. That's not the right word, right?" So like I'm going to start saying irregardless, just because I know it's not a word and I know it's going to aggravate people. But
Well, you would be purposely doing it, but there are some people who
there
literally
are
like
other
they
people that do
lack
that too.
punctuation, grammar. It's kind of like, did you go to elementary school at all or what?
Right.
Because this, I will just, I will disengage. I don't care how important. If I cannot read it and I feel slow reading it because of you can't spell. I just, oh well, I'm not going to read it.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to treat it like, remember how paper applications where they said if they cannot read your writing, they won't try. They'll just throw out your application.
Yep.
That has been stuck in my brain.
Yeah.
So
All
I
right.
just disengage it.
So on to our celebrity topic of the week. Chris Rock has a special out on Netflix. I have fell asleep to it about 5 times, enough to know
It's not that
what
funny.
what he says in it. And yeah, so let's check it out.
Will Smith is finally opening up about Chris Rock's Netflix special coined the selective outrage, after which the comedian finally let out how he felt, a year after the slap heard around the world at the Oscars.
People like, did it hurt? It still hurts. I got summertime ringing in my ears.
According to ET Online, quoting a source close to Will Smith said he is outraged, hurt, and embarrassed by what Chris Rock said about him, further adding, "I'm shocked Netflix will give him a platform to attack me and my family with such provocative words."
I didn't have any entanglements.
I didn't think y'all would see that.
The source further spills out that Will Smith is embarrassed and hurt by what the comedian said about him and his family during the special, where also Chris referenced the cheating rumors surrounding Will and his wife Jada Pinkett Smith and August Alsina in 2020. As Will Smith also maintained he's disgusted by this attack from Rock, he wants Chris Rock and himself to move on as Will Smith has treated and worked on himself.
Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
I'm sorry, but Will Smith, you're not a victim in this situation, and here's why. You addressed the situation on your terms, and so did Chris Rock. He chose to do it in his profession, which is comedy, which we know that's what comedians do.
Should
And then,
coming.
yeah, well, yeah, and then you slapped. So if you slap me, you can't tell me how mad to get. And you can't tell me how long to hold on to it either. It's my choice when I'll let it go. Now, one time I get my one, and then that's it. I'm going to leave it alone after that. But I feel like Will is trying to be the victim. You're the one that got out of your seat, went up there, made a fool of yourself, slapping him.
Yeah.
He didn't address it. His brother tried to address on his behalf, but no one really pays attention to his brother.
Yeah.
So he waited for his moment to say and speak out on it. He turned it into humor. He turned a situation that the world deemed him to be the victim of into a humorous situation in his job profession. Whereas Will Smith claimed to have checked into a facility or something to get help. I don't know.
So
But,
you don't
yeah.
buy the argument that 2 wrongs don't make it right.
I mean, yeah, that may be the case, but you addressed it when you got ready.
Yeah.
Will Smith did. He didn't address it right away, but he addressed it when he got ready. And Chris just stayed quiet. Like you didn't hear him. He didn't make a post. He didn't do anything. He just kind of went away and dealt with it when he felt like dealing with it. And he did it with his job. If I'm going to address it, let me get paid for addressing it. So I'm going to do my job. So that's what he did. He didn't do a free interview. He got paid for it.
Right.
Now, is Chris Rock the funniest comedian? Absolutely not. I kind of think he's garbage, to be honest. Like I'm not his demographic, but
yeah. The whole 2 wrongs don't make it right argument to me doesn't fit here because I don't think what Chris is doing is wrong.
No, he's a comedian.
I don't see anything wrong with it. If anything, to your point, the whole him using this as a way to generate some income, why the heck wouldn't he? Like, Will Smith dropped a platinum album on him. You know what I mean? Like, he gave him as a comedian, he gave him the opportunity of a lifetime to catch eyes and ears by keeping his mouth shut, writing his jokes, and making a Netflix special out of it. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I mean, and the guy's a comedian. That's what he does for a living. So if you're going to lose your temper and go and slap somebody in front of the entire world, you better hope it's not a comedian. If you're sensitive to words, you better hope to God the person that you're hitting is not a comedian, because that is to be expected.
Or Tyson, because I guarantee if that was Tyson that stood up there at the Oscars and said that, he would have never left his seat.
Yeah, right. Right.
He wouldn't have got up.
Point, I agree with you about Chris Rock not being that funny. I think Chris Rock's art is stage presence, right? The way he commands a crowd and carries a dialogue is impressive. He can keep your attention, but it's not like laugh out loud, like rolling on the ground, like laughing type comedy. It's not Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart level.
Well, that's the thing. He makes Kevin Hart seem hilarious to me, and Kevin Hart is not funny to me. Like,
I think he is.
I can watch his stand up with a straight face the whole time, bored. Like, I cannot get into Kevin Hart. But if I had to put Kevin Hart and Chris Rock on the same stage, I'd probably be more interested for Kevin to start talking and for Chris to just be quiet, because he's just not. To me, he's not. I mean, he's a comedian, but he's not a comedian that I would like. Oh my goodness, I have to. I wouldn't even go with free tickets.
Yeah,
like, that's how funny he's not to me.
Comedy is an interesting thing, though, because I kind of went down this rabbit hole once, and kind of what happened with comedy is, like, in the 50s and 60s, what you had was a very Bill Cosby like comedy. It was like knee slap, good family, like no cursing style comedy. And then what happened is Richard Pryor hit the scene. Right. And when Richard Pryor hit the scene, he was funny because of how courageous, I guess you could say, he was. When I say courageous, I say that lightly, right? What he was willing to do was say things that other people then were not willing to say. It was so offensive to people at the time that someone would get on a platform, on a microphone, and speak the way that he spoke, right? And they just thought it was hilarious that someone had the courage to do that, right? And then that kind of evolved into just the comedy really just getting dirtier and nastier, and like we kind of lost our way, because you kind of follow that up with Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy kind of takes that to the next level, right? Like he takes that Richard Pryor uncensored kind of cussing filth type thing to the next level. And I gotta say, the early Eddie Murphy stuff really is funny. Like he really had a good run in the 80s. But I think when we hit the 90s, we hit the ceiling of that, right? We hit the ceiling of like, okay, just saying cuss words and saying foul things like Richard Pryor kind of did, like that doesn't do it for us anymore, right? And in that way, I almost find it more impressive when you come across a comedian that's like Bill Cosby. If you can if you can hold my attention for 2 hours and not say a curse word at all, and I'm laughing my behind off, that's talent. Like that is hard to do. Not to say that there's anything wrong with Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart the way they do it. But yeah. So who's your go-to favorite comedian?
Yeah, it's Cat.
Cat
It's
Williams?
always been Cat, Dave Chappelle, Paul Mooney, Richard Pryor. Like those were mine.
Really?
Like
See, Paul
Steve
Mooney.
Harvey. Steve Harvey was not funny to me. I felt like he tried too hard. He just was cornball. I mean, he was just I to me, I feel Steve Harvey lucked up enough to be a part of the Kings of Comedy, but he was not the king of comedy. It was I'm sorry, I forgot Bernie Mac, but he's gone now. But
Bernie is
Bernie,
undeniably
yeah,
good.
Bernie was, yeah, he just, I really think that it would have been probably neck to neck, if not, but Bernie probably would have took it between him and Cat Williams because to me, those are the top two funny.
Yeah. No, I gotta. That's hard to argue. Your top two.
Well, I'm saying like if it was like today's time, if Bernie
Yeah.
Mac would have never passed and we had to pick because we know Dave Chappelle had left the scene for a while. So we would
Right.
have been left with we were left with Cat and we were left with well, I guess if you count Chris Rock, but I mean, again,
Yeah.
we didn't have very many. You know, like I said, Dave Chappelle was funny when he had the Chappelle show. I mean, everybody loved Dave Chappelle. Like he had that audience, and then he just left the scene, and then he come back all those years later. So you had to get used to Dave Chappelle all over again.
It was
So,
a
but
different
I
time.
don't think Bernie would have left out though. I think he would have probably stayed in it a while longer.
Yeah, the thing is like when Chappelle come back, I actually felt like he was better when he come back because it felt more mature. The comedy felt more mature, and he was talking about real life things, right? He was speaking a narrative, and that's his genius. That's Dave Chappelle's genius is he can make a really, really valid point and just make you laugh your behind off in the process. Um, I've come to appreciate some guys though that I never really liked as a kid. Like Seinfeld is a lot funnier than I think a lot of people realize. Like that Netflix show he did, driving with comedians, getting coffee or whatever. Like that opened me up to his style of sense of humor, and it's almost like you have to understand him as a person to really understand the value of his comedy. But Seinfeld's pretty good. But if I had
Yeah.
to if I had to name a top like favorite comedian, that's really difficult for me to do.
See, if I had to name my all-time favorite, it would be Bernie. I would give my crown to Bernie.
Mine has to be Cat, but the thing about Cat Williams is I feel like he had still a lot of untapped potential because of his personal flaws. Like
And because of what he wasn't willing to do for Hollywood too, so you have to
what
kind of
he
throw
did
that in
off
there.
stage, what he did off the stage, right, created so many problems for him that I feel like he could have been the undeniable king of comedy had he not went the route that he did off stage. And the whole not being a sellout to Hollywood and some of the conspiracy stuff that he delves into, that just doesn't really, he's a really smart guy and he's obviously a critical thinker. And so, I can appreciate that about his viewpoints. It's just sometimes his viewpoints are so outlandish. They're so far out there that I'm just like, whoa, I can't co-sign that. Cat. Can't do it. But
Yeah, but then we also have to look at it too. Like people operate their freedom of speech, and some people aren't willing to
yeah,
cancel that because of someone else's distaste. Because when it comes to comedy, everybody's not going to like every little thing about it, but they are practicing their freedom of speech and doing stand up. That's the reason they're allowed to make it political and things like that because it's stand up comedy,
right.
But you have a sector for everyone. Like there's going to be some you're going to like. There's going to be some you're not going to like. Like I said, I feel like Kevin Hart tries too hard to be funny to the point it's not funny. But I mean, he has a network. But him and like Tiffany Haddish, I feel like she's like the male Kevin Hart. She's not funny to me. She's just not.
I feel like Kevin had a golden era and it kind of passed
He
him.
was better when he just stuck to like the movies before he started really doing like the
I don't
stand
know.
up.
There's a couple stand-ups that he's done that rank up there amongst the highest, best specials I ever seen. Like Like there, I would say probably 2011 Kevin Hart was really funny. Like, I mean, like stomach hurting, laughing type funny. But the problem with Kevin's kind of comedy is you kind of feel like if you've heard one joke, you've kind of heard them all. You know, the way he delivers and like
That's what I mean. Like
his,
it,
his style is just kind of like it's very much like if you feel if you've watched one special, you've watched them all. But yeah,
pretty much.
yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so something that I learned about Cat Williams that's kind of interesting is like most of these guys, in order to put their Netflix specials together, they actually go like their research and development process is comedy clubs. So they'll go and write a bunch of jokes and they'll do an hour or 2 hours at a comedy club and they'll gauge the audience reaction of their jokes at the comedy clubs, and then what they do is they'll do that for sometimes a year, 2 years of like just testing the audience with different jokes, and then they'll take all of those jokes and they'll pick the best ones, like the ones that like really got the comedy clubs rolling, and they string them all together in a narrative, and that's what you get on Netflix. You get the best of all of the stuff that they developed, you know, at the comedy club. So there's a lot of work that goes into these stand-up specials that a lot of people don't know about. But what's interesting about Cat is he refuses to do his comedy writing that way because he says every time that he's done that, people have ripped his jokes off. They stole his content. And so now his approach is like, me and my audience have a trusting relationship, right? Like people know that I'm going to bring the goods, right? He believes, and he's right. He feels like he's a good enough judge of his own content now, and he's developed a process that he doesn't need the comedy clubs to do that. So, in that way, he's unique than all the other guys because all the other guys need that audience to tell them what's funny and what's not. A lot of times they're just like throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping it sticks, right? They're just getting up there and being goofy, hoping that they say something that makes people laugh. And with Cat, he don't need to do that. He just has the process down. So
Right.
all right. Well, we're almost to an hour in, so I think that's it. I think that's it for tonight. No more comments. Remember, watch us on Spotify. Give us stars. IKEA, what's your Cash App?
It's $ the Lindsay podcast.
$ the Lindsay podcast. Mine is $ JC Shively.
Why do you have a the in front of it, man?
Have a what?
A
That's how you find me on Facebook.
Oh.
That used to be how you found me on TikTok till I deactivated TikTok. So bye TikTok. All right. See y'all next week.
Okie dokie. Bye, y'all.